Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into a really critical perspective on one of the world's most famous philanthropists. And it's all based on the book, The Bill Gates Problem.
We all know the story, right? Bill Gates, the tech visionary who cashed in his Microsoft fortune to become this force for good, saving millions of lives through the Gates Foundation. You hear these huge numbers thrown around all the time. But the book we're exploring today argues that where those numbers even come from, well, that's part of the problem.
So what exactly is the Bill Gates problem? Well, a book by investigative journalist Tim Schwab digs into that very question. And his argument is that the heroic story we all know might be dangerously incomplete. Okay, let's get into it.
The book really sets up this stark contrast between two totally different versions of Bill Gates. On one side, you've got the hero. But on the other, the book paints a picture that is way more complicated and, frankly, a lot more critical.
So here's the central claim of the book. You just can't understand the Gates Foundation unless you first understand the guy who built Microsoft. The argument is that those same competitive, sometimes ruthless business instincts, they didn't just vanish. Nope, they were just channeled into a whole new arena, global charity.
So how does the book say this actually plays out? It makes its case by drawing a direct line from Gates's earliest business moves all the way to how the foundation operates today.
The book goes back to the very beginning, detailing a history it describes as just relentless and fiercely competitive. It all starts with the relationship between Gates and his Microsoft co-founder, Paul Allen. From Allen's point of view, what started as a partnership between friends slowly turned into a series of moves where Gates, time and again, pushed for a bigger and bigger piece of the company they were building together.
And this quote from Paul Allen's own book really gets to the core of the author's argument about Gates's mindset. It's this idea of wanting to, grab as much of the pie as possible. The book suggests that this very instinct is the key to understanding everything that came later. And this is where the book really starts to connect the dots. It argues that the same kind of tactics from the Microsoft antitrust days show up again at the foundation. For instance, it claims the foundation will fund multiple competing vaccine developers. Why? Not just to find the best one, but to keep leverage over all of them. And it uses these things called global access agreements, which basically give the foundation licensing rights to the breakthroughs made by the people it funds.
This all leads the book to a really explosive conclusion, that the foundation isn't just partnering with big pharmaceutical companies anymore. By launching its own ventures, taking seats on boards, and steering research, the author claims the foundation now acts less like a charity and more like a giant tax-free player inside the industry itself.
Okay. So, if these serious critiques are out there, why is the public image of Bill Gates and his foundation so positive, right? The book argues the answer lies in the foundation's deep financial connections to the media. And to get a sense of the scale of this alleged influence, the book points to this number: over $2.5 billion in grants for journalism. Now, the argument isn't that they're paying for good press directly. It's more subtle. It's about creating a structural conflict of interest that might just make reporters think twice before they bite the hand that feeds them.
And according to the source, this funding has gone to a lot of very well-known and respected newsrooms, even ones that specialize in investigations. So the book poses a pretty simple question. How can a news organization really, truly investigate a benefactor who's also helping to pay its bills?
And it goes beyond just grants. The book points to what it calls dark money. We're talking about billions of dollars in payments for things like consulting or PR, where the public tax filings don't actually say who got the money. The author argues this lack of transparency makes it almost impossible to map out the foundation's true web of influence.
This quote from the author really sums up the central paradox he's pointing to. He's basically saying that because of all this financial influence and a brilliant PR strategy, one of the most powerful political actors on the planet avoids the kind of tough scrutiny that institutions of its size usually get. Instead of investigation, it gets admiration.
So all of this builds to what the book sees as the ultimate danger, the effect that all this private power has on our public, democratic institutions. Now, to frame this argument, the author does something pretty controversial. He takes the word oligarch. He says, look, if that word just means someone who uses their immense wealth to exert undemocratic political power, then why do we only use it for Russians?
His argument is that we should apply it to American billionaires who do the very same thing.
The book then lays out what it sees as the cycle for turning that wealth into real power. First, you build a massive fortune in a system that often taxes wealth way less than it taxes work. Then, you protect that fortune from taxes by putting it in a private foundation. And then you use those tax-advantaged dollars to influence government policy, get incredible political access, and steer public money.
And you can see how this influence might work in the real world. The book points to these big public-private partnerships. The Gates Foundation puts in its contribution, but that money is then used to leverage and direct huge amounts of taxpayer money. So for something like Gavi or the Global Fund, the foundation's investment is just a fraction of the total public funding, but it still gets a powerful seat at the table where all the decisions are made.
And this gets to a really important idea the book raises: opportunity cost. It asks us to think about this. When the entire global health agenda is shaped by one man and his foundation, what other problems aren't getting solved? You know, what other amazing solutions aren't even being explored because all the attention and all the money is being pulled toward the pet projects of one unelected billionaire?
And that leaves us with the book's final and maybe most challenging question. It forces us to zoom out beyond just one person and ask something fundamental about the whole system. Does the very existence of billionaire philanthropists with this kind of world-shaping power actually solve inequality? Or is it maybe just a symptom of the very inequity they say they're fighting?